We often look to the past to understand ourselves. Tonight, we turn our attention to the year 1912 and the story of a crime that baffled the New York City Police Department. It's a case that reminds us that behind historical records are real people whose lives were irrevocably changed by the events that transpired. This is their story as best as it can be told. In the bustling, electrifying New York City of the early 20th century, a new kind of criminal was emerging. Gangs, emboldened by the anonymity of the metropolis and the speed of the automobile, were staging crimes with unprecedented audacity. The New York City Police Department, an institution dominated by men, struggled to keep pace. But within its ranks was a secret weapon, a woman who had spent years working in the shadows, her skills and intuition largely unrecognized. She was a police matron, but her true calling was that of a detective. Her name was Isabella Goodwin, and a brazen daylight robbery was about to give her the chance to prove her worth to the world. Isabella Goodwin's journey in law enforcement began not on the streets, but within the station house. Widowed at a young age, she joined the NYPD in the 1990s as a police matron, tasked with supervising female and child prisoners. It was a role defined by domesticity, not detection. However, her sharp mind and keen powers of observation did not go unnoticed. For over 15 years, detectives would unofficially seek her help on cases that required a woman's touch, sending her undercover to investigate fortune tellers, swindlers, and thieves. She was paid a matron's salary of $1,000 a year, a fraction of what a male detective earned, and received none of the credit. She was one of the department's most effective investigators, yet her official title kept her invisible. On the morning of February 26, 1912, a crime occurred that stunned the city. Two messengers for the G.B. Hafner banking firm were transporting a $25,000 payroll through the streets of Manhattan. As they walked, a taxicab screeched to a halt beside them. Four men leapt out, overwhelmed the messengers in a swift, violent attack, and seized the satchel of money. Within moments, they were back in the taxi, disappearing into the city's traffic. It was a perfectly executed daylight robbery, a bold challenge to the authority of the NYPD. The newspapers dubbed it the taxicab robbery, and the police were under immense pressure to solve the case and apprehend the culprits. The investigation was assigned to some of the best detectives on the force, but they quickly hit a wall. The gang had vanished without a trace. The leader was suspected to be a notorious and cunning criminal named Eddie Kinsman, known to his associates as Eddie the Boob. Kinsman was slippery and well-connected in the city's underworld, a world that was notoriously closed to police infiltration. Weeks timed into months, and every lead went cold. The male detectives using conventional methods could not get close to Kinsman or his inner circle. Frustration grew at headquarters. The trail was growing colder by the day, and the department's reputation was on the line. It was then that Inspector Joseph Farrat, a proponent of new, more scientific policing methods, decided it was time for an unconventional approach. Inspector Farrat turned to the one person he believed could succeed where his best men had failed: Isabella Goodwin. He knew her reputation as a brilliant undercover operative. Her task was to infiltrate the social circle of Eddie Kinsman's girlfriend, a woman known as Swede Annie. To do this, Isabella Goodwin shed her identity and created a new one. She became old Liz, a frumpy, hard-of-hearing scrubwoman looking for work. She dressed in drab, worn-out clothing, adopted a shuffling gait, and took a job cleaning in a boarding house and saloon in the rough neighborhood where Annie and her friends were known to gather. She made herself blend in, appearing as just another piece of the scenery, a harmless old woman whom no one would ever suspect. As old Liz, Isabella Goodwin began her patient and dangerous work. She spent her days on her hands and knees scrubbing floors, and her evenings cleaning spittoons in the saloon. She played her part perfectly, appearing slow-witted and slightly deaf, which encouraged people to speak freely around her. She listened intently to the gossip and boasts of the local criminals who frequented the bar. She slowly and carefully befriended Swede Annie and the other women associated with the Kinsman gang. She learned their habits, their fears, and their relationships. For weeks, she gathered small, seemingly insignificant pieces of information, patiently assembling a puzzle that the male detectives could not even see. Her life was one of constant performance, where a single misstep could expose her and put her in grave danger. The breakthrough came one evening in the saloon. As Isabella, in her guise as old Liz, quietly went about her work, she overheard a conversation. A woman, a friend of Swede Annie, was complaining about her own boyfriend, comparing him unfavorably to the notorious Eddie Kinsman. In her frustration, the woman let slip a crucial detail. She mentioned that Kinsman and another gang member, Bill Morley, were not in New York, but were living comfortably in a boarding house in a completely different city, Albany. It was the piece of information the entire NYPD had been searching for months. Isabella concealed her excitement, finished her work for the night, and immediately and discreetly reported her findings to her superiors. With the location of the fugitives finally known, the NYPD moved quickly. Inspector Ferret dispatched a team of his best detectives to Albany. Isabella Goodwin, her undercover work now complete, provided them with all the intelligence she had gathered, giving them a clear picture of their targets. The detectives set up a surveillance operation at the Albany boarding house. When Eddie Kinsman and Bill Morley emerged, they walked directly into a police dragnet. They were taken completely by surprise and arrested without a fight. The masterminds of the great taxicab robbery, who had eluded the police for nearly half a year, were finally in custody, all thanks to the quiet, methodical work of a woman they would never have noticed. The arrests made headlines across the country, but the biggest story was not the capture of Eddie Kinsman, but the identity of the person who had made it possible. The press was enthralled by the tale of the police matron who had gone undercover as a scrubwoman to outwit a notorious gang. Isabella Goodwin, after years of working in anonymity, was suddenly a media sensation. Her photograph was in all the papers, and her exploits were celebrated. The police department could no longer ignore her contributions. In recognition of her extraordinary work, Police Commissioner Rhinelander Waldo officially promoted her to the rank of Detective First Grade. Her salary was more than doubled to $2,200 a year, placing her on equal footing with her male counterparts. Isabella Goodwin's promotion was a landmark moment for women in law enforcement. She had shattered the conventions that confined female officers to matronly duties. She continued her distinguished career for another decade, heading up a new squad of female detectives and handling cases involving fraud, theft, and fortune-telling. Her success proved that women could be just as effective, if not more so, in the dangerous and demanding world of criminal investigation. Her legacy is not just in the criminals she brought to justice, but in the doors she opened for the generations of women who would follow her, proving that a sharp mind and courageous spirit are the most valuable assets a detective can possess. Thank you for spending this time with us. Reflecting on these past events is a way of remembering the individuals involved and the impact their stories had on their communities. If you have any thoughts on today's case, we invite you to share them respectfully in the comments below. We hope you will join us again for our next true crime case.